This is week 6 in my series of audio diaries, recording my birding during lockdown, covering the period Tuesday the 9th to Monday the 15th of February 2021. We also hear what listeners had been seeing during that same week in February. Welcome to the Casual Birder podcast. I'm Suzy Buttress. As a casual birder, I take time to watch birds as I go about my daily tasks. In my show, I'll tell you about the wild birds I've seen, speak with other enthusiasts, take bird walks, and share stories from listeners around the world. In this series of audio diaries, I share the daily entries in my bird journal, telling you about the bird species I've seen, behaviours I've observed, and changes I'm noticing as the year progresses, all from the extremely local viewpoint of my garden and neighbourhood in Hampshire, England. In case you missed it, last episode I spoke with Benedict MacDonald, conservationist and author of the award-winning Rebirding, Restoring Britain's Wildlife. Benedict tells me how changes in the way we manage our countryside would create the right conditions for the reintroduction of both bird and mammal species that have been lost. Do take a listen. This episode is brought to you by Casual Birder Weekly, the show's newsletter. Although I connect with you in lots of places, the show's Facebook group, Instagram and Twitter, our contact can be a little fragmented. The newsletter is a great way for us all to stay in touch. Each week, I share exclusive updates and videos about the birds I've seen, tips to help you get the best birding experiences, recommendations for other podcasts or books I've enjoyed, and I let you know about any planned group birdwatch events. Sign up now. The link is in the episode notes. And now to my audio diary, covering the period Tuesday the 9th to Monday the 15th of February 2021. I recorded this on location in a local woodland, sitting on a log, enjoying the warm sunshine and the sounds of the birds around me. I'm sitting in a woodland known as Bull's Bushes Copse in Oakley in Hampshire. It's a beautiful sunny Sunday in early April, and we've come out for a walk and to explore a new woodland. I think that most of the trees here are beech trees. Currently there's very little out in leaf. Lots and lots of quite dark, long-stemmed trees. Lots of bramble, and the promise of what I think might be bluebells. So far on the walk, I've seen red kite, buzzards, common pheasants, nuthatch. We've heard our first chiff-chaff of the year. Haven't seen one, but heard one. Saw a wren dust bathing, which is the first time I've ever seen anything like that. There's jays and carrion crow around. And there was quite a lot of song, but it's coming up to midday and pretty quiet at the moment. So week 6 of my lockdown birdwatching diaries, Tuesday 9th of February. The weather, there was light snow with some broken sunshine. And the notable events of the day: a rook was shouting out a red kite that flew over. The red-legged partridge was looking very cold a bit later on in the day, so I went out and put some extra seed out just for it. And a wood pigeon was trying to get water from the frozen water bath, even though I'd got several bowls of fresh water out. And this is just a recurring theme. I should really make sure that every water bowl has fresh water in, because they will always go for the frozen one. It's so frustrating. So there's a great tit calling right now. And there's a light breeze. But other than that, it's very quiet here in the woods. So on that Tuesday, I saw 8 species in the garden, all the usuals. Rook, jackdaw. There were 3 blackbirds at one time, robin, blue tit, dunnock and 3 wood pigeon, and of course the red-legged partridge. Wednesday the 10th, it was clear, which was nice to see, very cold, and there was still light snow on the ground, but there was sunshine. What I did notice was there was a bank of cloud, so even though it was a clear sky, in the distance I could see a bank of cloud, and it was moving from east to west on the horizon, and it must have been moving pretty fast because I could watch it noticeably change as it moved across the horizon. I'd put up the window feeder. Rather than having it on the window, I put it on the banister of my deck because then I could see it from the house. And I haven't had a great deal of luck in the past with window feeders, mainly because I haven't got any plants close to the house, so the birds have got no reason to come that close to the window. So what I'd been doing was I tied the window feeder to the banister and put out some suet pellets, and the robin used it for the first time. I was very pleased to see the blackbird feeding from one of the freshwater bowls, so that was reassuring. When I was putting out the fresh food and water, we had the commute of the rooks and jackdaws, quite a large flock of them flying over together. I also saw 8 magpies flying together, which is fairly unusual. Generally I see 1 or 2 magpies. The house sparrow pair came to the feeder together, and also that morning I saw 2 sparrowhawks flying over, and they were circling and seemed to be flying in a circle around each other. So I don't know if that was part of their courtship behaviour, but that was fairly early, so that was the 10th of February. A lot more birds in the garden that day, I think, because it was clear and calm, even though there was that cloud moving across in the horizon. I had that big flock of rooks and jackdaws flying over us. I wasn't sure how many were in that flock, but in the garden that day I had 6 jackdaws and 7 rooks, so it was quite a big day for jackdaws and rooks. I also had 9 wood pigeons, so that wasn't at the same time as the rooks and jackdaws. I don't think my garden could handle it. I also saw a robin, 2 blackbirds, 2 blue tits. I saw a redwing in the distance as well that day. I had the 2 house sparrows in the garden and saw the sparrowhawks again. I also saw a wren on my garden fence, so I was very pleased to see that. Because it was such a lovely day that day, even though it was quite cold, I decided to go out for a walk, and I actually found a new route to walk, which was the one that I talked about just a couple of episodes ago, but this was the first time I'd found it. It was a lovely little strip of deciduous woodland. The great tits were calling a lot. I saw lots of magpies, squirrels, and I saw a goldcrest, which I was really pleased to see, so close to home, and tree creeper and chaffinch, and they were my first sightings of the year. I also saw redwings in the trees. I found the trees where I could see them from home in the distance, but I actually went and found the trees. So that was really good. On that walk, I saw 3 goldcrests, 14 redwings. That was the flock that had been flying around, and I'd usually seen 1 or 2 of. 1 chaffinch, 12 magpies in the field at the community centre, which I think must have been part of the 8 that I'd seen previously. Anyway, it's a great little walk, and I've decided that's now my new patch. On Thursday, the 11th of February, it was really cold. The water in the water bars was frozen, and there was frost on the ground. But there was a clear sky, and it did turn out to be sunny again later. There was some high-level cloud and some low mist, but really off in the distance. So some of the houses that I could see in the distance were a bit hazy. Because it was so cold, I noticed that the magpie had frost on its tail. I've also seen that on the red-legged partridge now as well. So it's several birds. Oh, and the blackbird, so several birds that I've seen. 3 blackbirds again in the garden, chasing each other around. I think they were trying to mark out territories. House sparrow male was chirping away that day. It's just really lovely when you've got a clear sky and it's sunny. It just seems to bring out the birds, and especially that time of year when they're starting to work out their territories and starting to call for mates. You hear their song so much more. The blue tit had discovered my dried mealworm feeder and seemed to be particularly keen on eating them, which I hadn't really noticed before. It's continued to do that all the way through up till the current time. And there was a dunnock singing on the fence that day, so it was really lovely to hear. If I'd had my camera out, it would have been good because the robin pair were sitting on the feeder together and it would have made a lovely photograph. I heard a song thrush singing in the distance that day and a herring gull. Oh, and that day was the first day for about 5 weeks that I'd seen my rook friend. Hadn't seen it for ages, since the 4th of January, I think. And then on the 11th, one day, I was in the kitchen and it just suddenly turned up on my banister and hopped its way up towards the window, so I knew it was my friend. So I went out and fed it. I don't know where it had been for 5 weeks, why I hadn't seen it, but I was very, very pleased to have it back again. So on the 11th, in the garden, I had 7 wood pigeon, heard the song thrush, a magpie, 2 blue tits, 1 rook, but it was my friend. So it was a momentous day for having that there. The red-legged partridge came and we had the dunnock singing on the fence. I've got a hoverfly sitting on my phone. On Friday the 12th, our little run of lovely blue skies and calm weather, even though it had been very, very cold, changed, and it was overcast, still very cold, and all the water bars were frozen. I filled the feeders up at 7:30, and the wood pigeon, blue tit and robin all came down to the bath with the fresh water in to get water, so it was very pleasing to see. Now, I have an immature rook, I believe, in the garden, or that visits the garden. It's still got feathers on its upper bill and a black face. But it's definitely a rook because it's just starting to get a bare throat. And when it gathers food, you can see that the throat is expanding in the crop. But anyway, it came for some peanuts on my bird table. I'd been putting out peanuts in shells, which the jackdaws had been enjoying. And the immature rook came in and took a peanut, and the jackdaws all hassled it about it, because I think the jackdaws think the peanuts are for them, which they were really. So there's a couple of tit species near me, and they're marsh or willow tits, I'm not sure. Oh, I'm wrong, that one's a coal tit. So this immature rook had been chattering up on a rooftop, and it made the call, the 2-note call that I associated with my rook friend, and I've not heard from other rooks, so sounds like I'm mistaken, and more rooks do make that noise, unless it's learned from my rook friend. Now, interestingly that day, off in the distance towards sunset, I noticed a large flock of birds flying around, and I couldn't tell what they were. I knew they were probably the size of finches, but they were behaving in a way, there was a lot of them. There must have been, 30 or so in the flock. And I wasn't used to seeing birds like that from my garden. So I got some photographs, but right off in the distance, so, just blurred shapes. They some of them looked like they had forked tails, or that the tails forked a little. But I just really couldn't tell. They looked bigger than goldfinches, but not as big as starlings, was kind of all I could work out. And I knew there weren't starlings flying around. So all I knew is that I had some mystery birds in the neighbourhood that I needed to check out. In my garden that day, I had 11 wood pigeons, the usuals of house sparrow, robin, 2 rooks, 2 blackbirds and 2 blue tits. And I saw the red-legged partridge and a red kite flew over, but I saw a collared dove. So that was the first one of the year, I think, that I'd seen. So that was good. Saturday the 12th, once again back to the water being frozen and very cold with frost everywhere. In fact, it was so cold that I tried to knock out the water from the water dish, and it just would not come out. I was a bit worried about breaking the water dish. So I eventually put some water in the water dish to try to melt the ice a little bit so I could tip it all out. And when I did, I ended up with this enormous hockey puck of ice from the water dish. Anyway, I put fresh water out in the dish, and almost immediately as I left the water dish, the blackbird came down and had a bath. It was so cold. A little while later, a blackbird was at the water dish again, and a sparrowhawk came into the garden and went straight towards the blackbird, so it'd obviously been watching. Anyway, the blackbird went into our shrub, and the sparrowhawk followed it, but it couldn't find the blackbird, and it came out the other side of the shrub, and then it went round again to look again. But it did eventually come away empty-handed, so that blackbird must have found a good hiding spot within the shrub and just sat very, very still. It must have nerves of steel. Old Blue Tit checked out our nest box, so that was really good. And my rook friend turned up again for suet treats. That was about the third or fourth day in the row since the Tuesday. Oh, and I saw the wren was in the garden, and it flew to our ivy. We've got a clump of ivy on a garden arch, and I was really, really pleased to see it go in there. So I don't know whether it's got a little nest in there, if it's been roosting in there, but that was really exciting to see. So we had a lot of species in the garden that day. I had 12 wood pigeons, the 2 blackbirds, a robin, 2 magpies, house sparrow, blue tit, saw the red kite fly over, the sparrowhawk in the garden after the blackbird, 2 rooks, 2 jackdaws, a dunnock, a lesser black-backed gull flew over, and the wren. So that was 13 species that day, so that wasn't bad at all. Sunday the 14th, Valentine's Day, was windy, overcast and cold. I had to remove a thick layer of ice from all of the water bowls before refreshing them. Dunnock was singing again. Oh yeah, I noticed how birds feed each other. There was a robin at the suet feeder. It dropped a suet pellet which fell onto our ice plant. The dunnock jumped up to eat that, broke it in half, and a piece fell onto the floor which a blackbird rushed over to eat. So it's just like one suet pellet fed 3 different birds. And my rook friend turned up again. Hello, some crows are calling out in the background. So 13 species again that day, but slightly different species. So we had 8 wood pigeons, robin, a carrion crow came in the garden, blue tit, I saw 2 magpies, didn't come in the garden, 2 blackbirds, 2 jackdaws, saw a herring gull, black-headed gull, lesser black-backed gull, dunnock, red kite and house sparrow. The red kite wasn't in the garden, it just flew over. Monday the 15th of February, it was wet. There was a moderate wind. It was a bit warmer, but it was misty off in the middle distance. Dunnock was singing on the fence, and the song thrush was singing as well. So it was a very singy kind of day, even though it was a bit wet and miserable. I noticed that there was a blackbird that seems to have been in a scuffle. I think I mentioned it in a previous episode. So it had some scuffed up feathers on its back. That was still in the garden, so that was obviously still doing okay. Wren was having a good look around in the flower bed, so I don't know if it was looking for nesting materials, but my hopes are up that that's what it was looking for. Don't often see them on the ground. They're generally looking around edges of fences and then maybe on the fence singing. Oh, I went out near sunset to see if I could find out what the mystery birds were, and I think they were linnets. I got some photos, but just as I zoomed in on them, some dog walkers came by and scared them all off, and then they all went into a big shrub and they were all there singing away. So I got some recording of them, but I couldn't be absolutely sure that they were linnets. But I'll check on BirdNet. But anyway, I don't know if those linnets were just passing through for winter or if they're going to be ones that are around year-round. I'll keep looking out for them. I haven't seen them again, but I'll keep looking. So it's a bit of a quieter day in the garden. Only had
Well, I had 11 visitors. The most numerous was the wood pigeon, where I had 10 of those at one time. And the dunnock was singing again. I had 2 goldfinches in the garden, and the red-legged partridge visited. So that was week 6 of lockdown. A few notable birds then, and I was absolutely delighted that my rook friend turned up again. I've named it Rooksy, very original, but I'm really thrilled that it's been coming back to the garden.
While I was recording, you may have heard the following birds in the background: common pheasant, nuthatch, common buzzard, coal-tit and carrion crow. There was also a potential tawny owl calling out at one point. I didn't think they called during the day, so I may be mistaken. I've not been able to enhance the audio enough to be sure, but if you happen to hear it as well, let me know what you think. This was the sentence where it occurred, behind the word and. I noticed a large flock of birds flying around, and I couldn't tell what they were. I knew they were. I had a lovely walk in the woods both before and after recording, and I'll tell you more about it when I reach that week in my audio diaries. Stay tuned. Each week on my social media channels, I ask you to tell me your top 5 bird sightings or moments from the last 7 days. Looking back at the responses I received for the second week in February, the following were of particular note. Ewan, the Edinburgh birdwatcher, had a blackcap on his coconut feeder in his garden. From elsewhere around the UK, Chris had lots of redwings, mostly ground feeding. Sam reported waking up hearing a woodpecker hammering away. Pete noticed a buzzard being mobbed by crows and magpies in suburbia, and he'd also put up his nest box, ready for the coming season. Adam had seen the first missel thrush for his garden. Andrew mentioned he saw a goosander, and he said it looked like it was playing in the rapids. It was shooting them, then flying back up to have another go. I'm sure it was doing something serious like hunting for food, he says, but it looked like fun. In fact, I've seen mallards do that myself. I don't know whether it's for fun or not, but it certainly looks like it. Jeff in Hungary saw a lesser spotted woodpecker, thinking that spring had arrived, and drumming on his dead walnut. Natasha in Shetland had been seeing snipe everywhere, but she says, woke up this morning to rain and all the snow has vanished, so I suspect they'll go back to their usual shy and retiring ways. Karin in Finland had seen bearded reedlings in frozen reeds that were a lifer for her. And of course, bearded reedlings are also known as bearded tits. That's wonderful, Karin. Congratulations. Jo in France said that she'd had an amazing day driving home from friends and seen hundreds of cranes flying, possibly in migration, and hundreds of lapwing. That must have been at the beginning of migration. What a fantastic sight to see. Vita in Lithuania saw the first waxwings for this winter and the middle spotted woodpecker at their feeder. And from the United States, Paul in California had filmed a turkey vulture feeding upon a California sea lion carcass, and he'd also filmed and photographed a merlin. Angel in Texas had seen a gorgeous Audubon's oriole visiting their suet, and it was a new garden bird. Mark in the Pacific Northwest said, we've been hit with a rare snowfall and ice storm here, and so we've been inundated with dark-eyed juncos who seem quite happy in the snow. Brant had seen a roadside full of Lapland longspurs and horned larks. And Jessica, who lives in Australia and was at the start of autumn, said, listening to the sound of birds, especially the chatter of superb fairy wrens as I picked blackberries. I really do enjoy hearing from you all each week. And that brings me to my next topic of episode 100. So we're just a few episodes away from episode 100, and I really want to celebrate it with you. I'd like to hear about your joyful moments when birding, whether of the birds you've seen or how birdwatching makes you feel. I'm looking forward to hearing from you. Personal recommendation is a powerful way to help others find the show. This week is my birthday, so why not make this week the week you tell someone else about the show? Share it on social media and tag me in the post. You can also help support the show's production by contributing to the show's tip jar. And the easiest way to do this is to buy me a virtual coffee. You'll find the link in the episode notes. And thank you so much this week to Stephanie, Bruno, Karin and Darren for buying me virtual coffees. Do keep in touch. Tell me about your sightings by leaving me a message on SpeakPipe or on the contact form on my website casualbirder.com. And don't forget to sign up for the newsletter Casual Birder Weekly. The links to all of these are in the episode notes. Thank you to Randy Braun for designing the artwork for the show. The theme music is Short Sleeve Shirt by the Drones. Thanks to them for letting me use it. Check out their website at dronesmusic.net. Thank you all for listening, and I hope you'll join me again for another episode of the Casual Birder podcast.